Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Welcome to a very important episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. I have Denny Behrens on the show today, and he is the Colorado State Director for BigGame Forever, and also the co-chair of Colorado Stop the Wolf Coalition. Denny, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on with you, Bruce.
Well, a good friend of ours, Mia Anstein, suggested we get together, and the wolf issue is here. As we talked last night, wolves are already in the state, so I'm scratching my head. How can you reintroduce something that's already here? You can certainly release breeding pairs. And then we talked about the Mexican wolf, that there's already laws on the books that we're going to talk about later. One question I have starting out, in yesterday's conversation, you mentioned that the gray wolf isn't the indigenous wolf that was in the state of Colorado and became extinct. Can you bring me up to speed on what type of wolf we do have here in Colorado?
Okay. Well, historically, the wolf that was here was a smaller wolf. Most of us called it the timber wolf back when you talk to the old timers. It's the same wolf that was up in Montana and Idaho prior to the wolf introduction. And the wolf that they brought in to the Yellowstone ecosystem in Idaho was the northern Canadian gray wolf, which is a much larger, more aggressive wolf. Back in the 40s in Colorado, they basically eliminated the wolf in the state of Colorado. So that was a lot smaller wolf. Granted, it was very aggressive and killing livestock, and that's why they eliminated it back then. But the thing that we're seeing now in the state of Colorado is that the wolves that were released into Yellowstone and have propagated into Wyoming are now migrating across the border into Colorado. And it's almost a month ago now, there was a black wolf with a collar up in Grand County that came across the border. It was tracked by Wyoming Fish and Game. And then once it was spotted in Colorado Parks and Wildlife wanted to know, where did this wolf come from? And so they contacted Wyoming, and of course they got the digital codes to be able to track that wolf. And so the last conversation I had with CPW Northwest Regional Manager was that periodically they're trying to get a plane up to track that wolf. And that's been about 2 weeks ago, and that wolf was still in Colorado at that time.
No, it's a single wolf. Is that correct?
That's what they saw, was a single wolf. And so people need to understand that wolves have been migrating into the state of Colorado, documented wolves, since 2004. The first wolf was killed on Interstate 70 west of Idaho Springs, and that was a female. And then since then, there's actually been a wolf. If you go onto CPW's website, click on wolves, you'll see a video of a black wolf up in the snow up in northern Colorado, which they videoed. And then in 2011, there was one that was poisoned between Meeker and Craig and accidentally poisoned. And then there was in 2015 was the one that was shot by the coyote hunter up by Kremling, Colorado. In 2016, in August of 2016, there was a wolf that was being monitored by Wyoming Fish and Game, and it came across the border and was traveling around the state. We actually have the digital map of that now, where we can see it came from northern Wyoming and traversed across Wyoming and then down into Colorado, spent quite a bit of time. It headed toward Estes Park and then turned around and came to toward Kremling, Colorado, and it lost its collar, which we found out is probably a natural maybe occurrence, because if they're collared when they're small, that collar can't choke the animal. So anyway, it fell off. That prompted Wyoming Fish and Game to contact CPW and APHIS, and they went and found the collar. But what was interesting was the data that we found out afterwards from investigating that particular wolf was that APHIS said it was traveling with 7 other wolves. And so there
was a pack. There's a pack established someplace.
Well, wherever it went. And so that particular wolf was something that caused a huge problem in the state of Colorado. President Trump was elected on the 16th of November in 2016. On the 18th of November of that year, the Obama administration, through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, declared a wolf conservation area inside the state of Colorado. Most people don't know that. We actually have a map that shows that. And based on that particular wolf that lost its collar, you now come down out of Bags into Craig, Colorado. If you were to take a black marker and follow the highway, you come from Bags to Craig, you go over to Steamboat, you go all the way down through Oak Creek, all the way down to I-70, and then you go all the way to east to I-25, and then all the way back north I-25 to the Wyoming border. That's a huge area. They did not tell any county commissioners that they were going to do it, and they sure didn't tell our state legislature that they were going to do that. So that's caused a major problem for APHIS as far as managing coyotes in that area to protect livestock. And there's a number of sheep ranches within that boundary. If you get every chance to look at it, you'll see how big it is. But they're limited on the size of traps. There's no snares that they can use. And the main thing is, again, there's no aerial gunning, but that particular portion, and when wolves have pups, is usually August, September, and October area, right around there. When the pups get to be about the size of a coyote, they don't want them to be accidentally aerial gunned by APHIS. But APHIS doesn't do much aerial gunning during that time period. It's always done on the snow. So that's not that big of an issue.
What Can you define who APHIS is, please? For our
APHIS is the Animal Damage Control of Department of Ag. They're the professional trappers and hunters that take care of problem animals such as coyotes that depredate on livestock, and that, or bears or mountain lions. So they're a federal agency under the Department of Ag. They're really some good guys, and they do a great job at trying to maintain populations of coyotes when we have problems with them. But that particular situation, if a howl rendezvous point is established or a den is found, there will be a 11-mile radius around that area where APHIS cannot do anything. But it just pertains to APHIS. It doesn't pertain to a rancher or for grazing or oil and gas development at this time. But the problem is it's been established.
Want to become a smarter deer hunter? Know when to hunt, where to hunt, how to hunt? Well, Deer Hunting Institute Part 1 was created to do exactly that, because many people have told me they struggle with spending all days in the woods and never seeing a deer, only shooting does and young deer, leaving the woods empty-handed way too many times. Found Mr. Wonderful, but just couldn't get on him, having difficulty finding a place to hunt. recognizing possible mistakes you're making every year, having tried and failed to find qualified mentors who deliver results. If you had these frustrations or struggles, go to deerhuntinginstitute.com, and there you'll find a 13-module course to help you solve these problems. Again, go to deerhuntinginstitute.com and find some answers.
Now, it was established by executive order by Mr. Obama.
Well, it was done through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under his administration.
So who signed off on it? The director of Fish and Wildlife?
Yep.
So without any oversight at all, somebody requested this be done. I don't think he came to work one day and said, oh, I'm going to go to Colorado and set up this Colorado wolf conservation area. Or maybe they did. I don't know. How do you think it came about?
Well, I think that there's been a push for a long time that people within that agency want to see wolves into Colorado. You know, most sportsmen know that there's within U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, there's always been people that have, you know, not really been supportive of hunting. I guess that's the best way to say it. And their agenda, their ideologies have been pushed within that agency. And I think during that particular time period of that administration, those people were looking at every opportunity they could to be able to expand the range of the wolf.
Now, we're talking about gray wolves.
Yes.
Okay. From Canada, not indigenous to Colorado or Wyoming or Montana or Idaho.
Correct.
So that's one point you should understand there's differences. And the other thing is, and as Denny already pointed out, there are wolves already in Colorado. How many breeding pairs? We have no data on that. We have empirical evidence that there was a pack with the collared wolf. So we're not talking about a reintroduction at all. We're talking about supplemental augmentation of the existing wolves. And so, you know, is that a sticking point or not? Is that something that people should be aware of? Help me out with that, Denny.
Well, I think it is absolutely a valid point, because CPW back in 2004 created a wolf working group, members from the environmental community, the ag community, sportsman's community, and some biologists that sat down and put together a document. It's called Recommendations Concerning the Wolf. And if you go on to, again, to CPW's website, you can click on wolf and you can click on that document and read it. Okay. So in that document, it says that Colorado will allow the wolf to naturally migrate into the state. I mean, it's pretty tough to, you know, have a wall built across the Wyoming border to keep the wolf out. So we knew they were going to come in. So within that document, it says that naturally the wolf can migrate into the state. In 2016, the Wildlife Commission, with staff recommendation, put forth a resolution, and this is basically the third one that they've done, that said no introduction of the gray wolf or the Mexican wolf into the state of Colorado, but they will allow migration of the northern wolf into the state. And so that document still stands. And people need to understand that, okay, the wolf's going to be allowed to migrate into the state, but to do an introduction of wolves into the state, CPW and the commission are opposed to that. Even if they were to do some kind of introduction, it still has to go partly through the legislature. And a wolf plan, which a fully documented wolf plan talking about thresholds, management, all that still has to be developed. That has not been done. And it's actually spelled out in that recommendations that plan should be done. So it's important for the public to know that we already allow wolves to migrate into the state. There's no need to do an introduction of wolves into the state. It's the same wolf they've already introduced into the Yellowstone ecosystem and Idaho that is already migrating into the state of Colorado. And so why would you want to do something that the commission and Parks and Wildlife have said, okay, we're going to allow them to migrate in, but we don't want a full-blown introduction?
Now, by full-blown introduction, how many breeding pairs does that represent?
That's a really interesting question, because during the Wolf Symposium that the Rocky Mountain Wolf Project put on the last part of November in 2018 in Durango, Colorado, we went down and actually were in the audience watching that presentation. We actually videoed that presentation. During that presentation with Mike Phillips and the rest of his staff or crew, however you want to call them, they made the statement that they wanted to see 250 wolves released into western Colorado in 4 locations. The Route National Forest, which is the Flat Tops, the Grand Mesa National Forest, which is just outside here of Grand Junction, the Uncompahgre National Forest, and the San Juan National Forest. So if you take that, and we developed some maps based on their presentation, and if you take 250 wolves and divide that out, that's like 62 plus wolves in each location. Understand that when they introduced wolves into the Yellowstone ecosystem in Idaho, the total wolves that were released was 66. Within 12 years, they had expanded to over 1,600 wolves. It doesn't take much to do math to think about the amount of wolves that would be in the state of Colorado on the western slope within 10 years if you start to release wolves according to what they wanted. That would be a mega population of wolves. Plus, when you're talking about releasing wolves that close to the proximity of people, I mean, you think about Colorado as, 5.6 million people right now, and the western slope is heavily populated with people. There really isn't any room for the wolf. They like to use an example that Yellowstone area, population of density of acres, and then they look at the public lands of Colorado on the west, and they want to compare that to be the same. But we all know, living over on the western slope, that all our elk and deer populations, even some moose populations in certain areas, when winter hits, they come down to the winter range. And the winter range is mostly populated by ranchers and farmers and towns.
And ski areas.
Yep, ski areas, you're right. And so there would be a major problem right away, conflicts, if that was to be done. You can't be releasing that amount of wolves into western Colorado. And it's kind of like the old cartoon between the Roadrunner and El Coyote thing. There was always signs that those two read, but I don't think wolves read signs that say no trespassing. So, or you can't cross this highway. They're going to go where they're going to go, and they're going to follow the prey base. And if the prey base leads them into livestock areas, livestock is a lot easier to get than what elk and deer are. And so there will be major conflicts from day one. It's really not fair to the wolf to take him from Canada and bring him down here and release him into western Colorado. It will be conflict from day one.
Do you want to become a smarter whitetail hunter, knowing when to hunt, where to hunt, how to hunt? Over the past 4 years, people have asked me, hey, I'm struggling with spending all day in the woods and never seeing a deer, only getting opportunities at doe or young bucks, leaving the woods empty-handed too many seasons. Located the deer of a lifetime, but just flat out missed. Having difficulties finding a place to hunt, recognizing mistakes that you're making over and over again, and you want to eliminate them. Having tried and failed to find qualified mentors. Well, you've come to the right place. Why? Because Deer Hunting Institute Part 1 was created by me, Bruce Hutchin. It's a 13-module course that'll talk about being lost in the deer hunting forest, never hunted. What is a hunter? What is an adult onset hunter? What rules apply? Finding a mentor, choosing a weapon, finding a place to hunt, scouting a hunt location, stand sites, stand access and exit, reading sign, and when to hunt. All these are available for you at deerhuntinginstitute.com. Go now to deerhuntinginstitute.com and sign up for the best deer hunting course in America.
Hearing about this issue and reading somewhat, I did read Bench Post. Folks, in this man's opinion, and you can reach out to me at whitetailrendezvous@gmail.com and let me know your thoughts. I welcome your thoughts. I think conversation's good. But when they release breeding pairs into an area, they're going to raise their pups, and then the males, they're going to be either kicked out or they're going to be killed by the alpha male, period. So it doesn't matter where you put them. The San Juans are kick-ass bad country, and if I was a grizzly bear, that's where I'd live. But see, Denny brought this up. It's simply the elk don't stay in the high country all year round. They go to the south-facing slopes. They go where food is because they have to eat, and then when green up comes, they go back the other way. But they don't stay there. Just like they found in Yellowstone. Yellowstone was a great experiment, but it turned into a horrific experience. Why? Because the wolves don't know where the park ends and public land or private land begins. And they just are prolific because a wolf doesn't have really any enemies. It has a grizzly bear. Not a lot of those in Colorado, if any. And so, they're the alpha predator. And when you have the alpha predator, he kind of does whatever he wants to do. Now we have people that are stirring up the pot, and it has nothing to do with the wolves. And that's where people are going to go, what? No, because the wolf is simply a ploy. It's a biological weapon to end hunting, to take over public lands that you and I own. And you might think I'm, a little off my rocker, but I really don't give a rip, because you have to understand there are people in this country that do not want you to hunt. Ergo, if there's no elk, Parks and Wildlife can't sell elk tapes. Parks and Wildlife will basically implode. And the thing that really gets me about this whole process with the wolves, because the wolves will come to Colorado because there is no water. They're in the Rocky Mountain system, and they will come, as we've already discussed that. But the thing is that Parks and Wildlife is going to be charged by the governor of the state of Colorado to fund this. They don't have the money. My whole angst is, if this should pass, then the whole state, every single citizen in the state should have skin in the game and pay $1 or whatever it costs to have this introduction. In no way, shape, or form should Parks and Wildlife, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, have to fund an introduction of wolves to wolves that are already here, and where they're on record of saying that, in fact, wolves cross the border, they cross the border. And we'll set up a management program and we'll manage it and we'll go from there. So tell me about fence posts. And you know that data better than I do, Denny. Share with the twisted, really, as I learned a long time ago, follow the money and you'll find the end game. So we follow the money in this. And there's a great article that Denny shared with me, and it'll be in the show notes. But talk to me about the article on fence posts.
Okay, there was a very courageous lady who's done a lot of background research concerning the whole wolf issue, the environmental issue, the agenda of the environmental people. And she did her homework. She really went out and investigated this. So what we found out was that the Rocky Mountain Wolf Project, who's been basically working in Colorado for about 4 years, promoting introduction of wolves into the state of Colorado, was really not a 501c3 or C4. When you went to the Secretary of State's website to find out who they were, all of a sudden you come up with a group called the Tides Center, TIDES. And that put up a red flag, because who is the Tides Center? And why is the Rocky Mountain Wolf Project working under that name? And so this particular lady did her homework and started to follow that trail. And that led back to George Soros. The Tide Center is a money laundering group for environmentalists for George Soros. I don't want people to think that I'm sitting here with a aluminum foil cap on my head with antennas, that I'm a conspiracy guy. This is documented proof of a trail that leads back to that person. It's interesting that all those groups that were within the Rocky Mountain Wolf Project, including the Ted Turner Endangered Species Fund, who Mike Phillips works for, have been getting major funding from out of state. Their first documented report that they have to do with the Secretary of State showed that the majority of the money that they have raised to help gather signatures came from out of state. Over $100,000 from one organization to help pay for people to go out and gather signatures. So it is a major push by the environmental community outside the state of Colorado to come in here and use this biological weapon of the wolf and to cause havoc and chaos and harm to the people of Colorado, especially Western Colorado. There are a number of issues pertaining to the wolf. And we talked about the fact that it's not fair. Colorado Stop the Wolf Coalition created our first video with Dick Ray, who is an outfitter and past CPW wildlife commissioner. And you can view that video on stopthewolf.org. Matter of fact, there's a number of videos that we've done on that page that you can view. But that particular video really talks about the fact that wolves will not stay in Colorado. If wolves are released into the San Juans and especially into the Weminuche Wilderness area, all the animals on the south side of the Weminuche area migrate into New Mexico. Now you have the northern gray wolf, which will follow those herds into New Mexico. We have spent, when I say we, Sportsman, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, has spent $44 million in trying to bring back the Mexican wolf into Arizona and New Mexico. And again, according to the documents, there's supposed to be no Mexican wolves above Interstate 40. but the northern gray wolf, I don't believe, can read. And so when he crosses the border into New Mexico, then you're going to end up with the same problem that you had in Idaho and Montana. The proponents of wolves want to allow the Mexican wolf and the northern gray wolf to breed and become this bastard wolf. Excuse me for saying that, but that's what they're trying to do. But according to the Endangered Species Act, you cannot take one species and cause harm to a species that is listed as endangered. So why in the hell do these people want to do that? There is an agenda. And that's basically what you see in the document that was put forth in the fence post. In a nutshell, I guess, Bruce, that's basically what that's about.
Well, Soros wants to take over the land or wants to end hunting. Bottom line, what's his end game?
Well, we know that most of those organizations, defenders of wildlife, have always had an agenda to do away with hunting. And some of those other groups, if you go online to the Rocky Mountain Wolf Project, you will see their partners. You just click on their icons and it'll take you to their page and you can start to read through this. And you'll find out that a number of those organizations would like to see hunting just go away. And they're working very hard at making that happen. Defenders of wildlife especially has sued numerous times over the wolf issue, which, in 2010, 2012, there were delistings that were supposed to take place. And because of lawsuits, they didn't happen. And so that's where we're at now with the wolf. The wolf has migrated to Washington, Oregon, Northern California, causing major problems up there. And one issue that I'd like to get in a little bit later on the discussion is the fact of the disease that the wolves carry. But this whole agenda about causing havoc, getting ranchers off of property, stopping grazing, stopping oil and gas production is all part of the radical environmental movement. And that's what you're seeing is being played out. It is a biological weapon. The wolf has been used like that. People in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho will tell you that. Even biologists will tell you that. It wasn't an experiment to see if wolves could make it. It was an actual attempt to introduce an animal that would cause havoc and harm, and therefore expand their agenda so that they could continue to do away with hunting, to do away with grazing, to do away with oil and gas exploration, any mineral extraction. So I don't want to really dwell a whole lot on the conspiracy aspect of it, but people need to know the truth. And that document in the fence post opened a huge door to the reality of what's happening across the West. My friends in Idaho, in Montana, even in Wyoming, have said it to me over and over again. If Colorado loses this ballot initiative to the wolf, we will lose the West to the wolf. That is very, very disheartening. You think about that. States like Utah, Nevada, Nebraska, Kansas, they already have sightings of wolves. But if you lose Colorado to this issue and wolves are placed into here, even if they only release 50 wolves, you can look at the population growth of what happened in the Yellowstone ecosystem. 66 wolves in 12 years, 1,600 wolves. Where are they going to go? They're going to go into Utah. They're going to cross over the Rocky Mountains. They're going to go into Estes Park area. And you start looking at the conflicts between wolves and people when we already have conflicts with bears and mountain lions in this state that we can't control. You put that apex predator in here, and in 20 years, you can kiss hunting goodbye in the state of Colorado. That is a very serious situation. Our hunting heritage is at stake in the West. If sportsmen don't wake up and get involved and help us defeat this issue in the state of Colorado, and I'm talking about sportsmen across the nation, many of them come and hunt here in the state of Colorado because you can buy an over-the-counter elk license in this state. And it has been, to me, it's been the only state where a father can say to a son who lives in the Midwest or the eastern part of our nation and says, do you really want an experience? Do you want to understand what the romance and the heritage of our hunting heritage is all about? I'm going to take you to Colorado, and we're going to go hear elk bugle, and you're going to be able to get a license at the age of 12 and get your hunter safety and come out here and experience what it is to see the heritage of the North American model of conservation that sportsmen have done. That will vanish. That's serious. It's up to us. And my generation and your generation, Bruce, have tried to protect that. There is a younger generation of hunters in the nation right now that I don't think grab the concept of our heritage. I think they think about, I want to be able to just go and enjoy hunting. I want to have the best equipment. I want to have the best camouflage. I want to go out there and harvest an animal and put a picture on Facebook and say, look what I did. But they don't think about what it means to be a hunter. They don't think about our heritage. They don't think about the future of a 6-year-old grandson that I have that loves to shoot his bow in the backyard with me. And the fact that I'm 70 years old, I don't know if I'll be hunting by the time I'm 77 years old. But I'd love to be able to take him on his first hunt in the state of Colorado. If wolves are released in 2023, according to the initiative, in 20 years, you can kiss it goodbye. That grandson of mine might hunt for a few years, but after that, he's going to turn to me, if I'm still alive, and say, Opa, what happened? Why didn't you fight so that I could continue to hunt like you did and my dad did? That's a responsibility that we have. And we can't deny that. We have to engage, each and every one of us, and get on the website, stopthewolf.org. Donate your $25. Fred Eichler did a fabulous video for us, asking every elk hunter in the state of Colorado to donate $25. You can go to Cabela's or Bass Pro and probably buy the best pair of socks that you can get to make sure that you can get out there and be comfortable hunting, and you'll spend $25. Bruce, I can't say it enough. I know how you feel. I know how my generation of people that hunt feel, and we have to reach out to that younger generation of hunter and tell them, you got to get involved.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show tonight. Before we go, can I take a moment and say thank you? Listen, as we started the Whitetail Rendezvous podcast journey, we had no idea what to expect. But after 4 years, We received a ton of feedback from our over 400,000 listeners and climbing to 500,000. Speaking of which, we are now closing in on over 600 featured guests. Thank you. And a quick shout out to all those who have left an iTunes review and your feedback. I get those and really appreciate it. And it's awesome to see what you have to say, and we do read every single one of them. And I just want you to know that I am incredibly grateful for your kind words regarding the show. And all of the ratings and reviews help us attract more listeners. And if you're one of those new listeners, welcome. Great to have you. By the way, if you haven't taken the time to rate and review our show and like the Hunting on Private Land strategy on how to get permission to hunt a private property, go to whitetailrendezvous.com as a special gift for just rating and reviewing our show. When you get there, look for the start button to get the details. Listen, I'll share you the top technique from some of the top hunters in the country on how do they get permission to hunt on private land. I'll share with you the exact techniques they use to get permission. As my way of saying thanks for rating and reviewing the show on iTunes. So join us next time. And remember, we're all on this journey together, learning, sharing, and becoming 365 hunters.
Now, where does somebody go to donate $25?
You go to stopthewolf.org. That's our website that we've created, and you can click right there and make a donation. You can watch the videos that we've created. We actually had Ron Velarde, who's the past Northwest Regional Manager, do a video for us concerning our moose in the state of Colorado. Most hunters don't know that in Wyoming, they put out a document in 2018, and it's their wolf report for 2018. The Shiras moose in Wyoming in 1996 was over 10,000 moose. By 2017, it was barely over 1,300. The majority of that problem, Wyoming Fish and Game says, is contributed to the wolf. So all those videos are on that site that you can watch. And we ask that you share them. All that stuff's available to share. You can put it on your phone. You can share it with your friends. And the other thing we're asking them to do is to volunteer. We need a volunteer from every county in the state of Colorado who's willing to come join us to get out there and educate the public as to the harmful consequences of wolf introduction. And before we leave, I do want to come back to this issue about disease, if that's okay, Bruce.
Sure.
The wolves that were released into the Yellowstone ecosystem in Idaho, when they were brought from Canada, had to go through an inspection as far as disease is concerned. What we found out, there's a gentleman by the name of Scott Rockholm out of Idaho who did a FOIA request to the nation of Canada and got the reports from the veterinarians who checked those wolves. We have that document. Those wolves were tested and treated for disease. The only disease they were treated for was rabies. There were a number of diseases that wolves carry. One of the critical diseases is called Echinococcus granulosus, or in the layman's term, hydatid disease. It is a tapeworm disease. The strain of that disease was prevalent in the lower 48 in the G2 strain, which is very minute. But the wolves that came in, that were brought in to the Yellowstone ecosystem, carried the G8 and G10 strain of that disease. That disease is fatal to livestock, wildlife, pets, and especially humans. And a lot of people say, oh, that's fear-mongering. It's not fear-mongering. If you go on to the website of the World Health Organization, over 1 million people have that disease at any one time. It's carried basically by canines, and the wolf was the one that was brought in. In January of this year, I went up to Idaho. We had heard that a lady had contracted that disease. We went up and did a video interview with her about the fact that she contracted hydatid disease from the wolves. She lives in Custer County, which was ground zero for the release of wolves in Idaho. Wolves have killed elk on her yard in the wintertime. She would open the door in the wintertime and there would be wolf tracks on her doorstep. And they truly believe that probably by her husband mowing the lawn, when the disease is actually, the wolf defecates on the ground and the scat is filled with eggs of hydatid disease, it becomes airborne. And she was probably in the yard working, or she was running on a four-wheeler, probably ran over it. She contracted that disease. You can watch that video on the same website, stopthewolf.org. Click on disease, and you can watch it. We also heard now that there's a gentleman in the state of Washington that they believe has come down with that disease. And so it's serious. Why would we want to introduce wolves that carry a disease that can cause harm? In 2017, there was a moose in the northern part of the state here in Colorado that was falling down, running into stuff. The rancher called the Colorado Parks and Wildlife and said, hey, there's a moose up here that's sick. It's falling down. So the DWM went up there and found the moose, shot the moose, cut its head off, took it down to CSU because they thought it had CWD. It didn't have CWD. It had hydatid cyst in the brain. It was dying from the disease. That's 2017, Bruce. Wolves have been migrating across the border since 2004. People need to think about this. If wolves become populated in the state, and especially a ranch dog goes out, and everybody knows what dogs do. They roll in the scat. People have to wash their dogs. But if they don't, and don't know that their dog has rolled in this scat, they can bring that disease right into the house. And that's very, very concerning because little kids pet dogs. Little kids put their hands in their mouth. People need to understand how serious this whole situation is about bringing wolves into Colorado. We have over 5.6 million people, and between 2040 and 2050, we'll have over 8 million people in this state. How can we have another apex predator in this state and not have conflict? It will be conflict from day
that's
one.
Impossible. Just impossible. And it doesn't matter, folks, if you're a fly fisherman, a hiker, ridge runner, kayaker, run the rivers in your river raft, mountain bike. If you're using national forests or other public lands where elk and deer, antelope roam, with the wolves already here, but with a hyper supplementation of wolves, and they stock breeding pairs. They don't stock just males and say, go find a lady. They start breeding pairs for exactly that because they can just run the numbers and they know X number of breeding pairs times X factor, and you just leverage it out and you do the trend, and all of a sudden in X number of years, there's not hundreds, but there's actually thousands of wolves. And unfortunately, we already have issues in southwestern Colorado with elk anyway, recruitment of elk. And It just doesn't work, folks. And so this man says, I don't care if you're in Mississippi, Boston, Massachusetts, and like to fly out to Colorado to your private ranch and hunt elk, or you've got a ranch in Ohio Creek and you live in New York City and fly your G5 to Gunnison and take your clients out and like to hunt elk, or you're just, like some of my friends, you put $1,000 in your pocket, a couple of guys get in a pickup truck and drive 30 hours and go elk hunting. There's something magical about the West. That's why I live here. I could live any place I want to live, but I live in Colorado because it's magical to be up on a mountain, to watch the sun rise and cast the new rays on a high altitude basin and hear a bugle and the mist comes out of his nostrils and that sound. It's magical, folks. It's purely magical. And to me, it's a spiritual experience. I'm not going to start crying, but I've seen it so many times that I know that's priceless to me. Now, you might not agree with me. You could care less about hunting. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, if you enjoy anything in the outdoors, this is a threat to that enjoyment, because cougars have killed people. We already have situations just outside of Denver where a cat came into the backyard and fortunately they fought it off. But more and more of these conflicts are arising. Why? Because more and more people live in the Front Range and are pushing into the mountains. And more people actually live on the Western Slope. And then throw in the skiers, and the elk love the south-facing slopes of skiers. Why? Because it's warm. There's food there. There's browse there. And they can eat it. Well, wolves go to these places. So someday in the future, with wolves released in Colorado, there will be a video of wolves chasing somebody on a ski hill, taking them down and ripping them apart. And unfortunately, I've seen videos of wolves ripping throats out of calves just after they're born. And they don't eat it. They just kill it. Why? Because the mother has trained the wolves how to kill, not unlike African lions. And you might say, oh, that doesn't happen. Well, folks, yes, it does. And you can't refute that. But since the state of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, has already said wolves are going to come in, we understand that, and we're going to manage the situation, and that's already on the books. So now we have a group of people, for whatever their agenda, want to hyper supplement wolves to take away my freedom. And I call it a biological weapon of eco-terrorism. That's a strong statement, but I think there's enough data out there that show that people will go to any length for their purpose, for their own ideology. That's my thought. And I'd like to hear your thoughts. Reach out to me at whitetailrendezvous@gmail.com. Denny, any last thoughts?
Well, again, I'd like to emphasize the fact that we got to have help to defeat this issue. We have to educate the Front Range people as to the harmful consequences of this so-called insane ballot initiative, and that's what I call it. They need to go to stopthewolf.org. They need to pull out their credit card, debit card, whatever, donate the $25 or more, and then volunteer to help us defeat this issue. There's enough of us. The coalition is building unbelievably. We got snowmobile associations. We got trail associations that have joined the coalition. And of course, cattle groups and sheep groups and sportsman groups and stuff. But it takes a huge coalition to defeat this. So we're reaching out to everybody and say, come help us. If you want to protect our hunting heritage and our wildlife, then get engaged.
Thank you so much, Denny, for being a guest on Whitetail Rendezvous. And again, have any questions, get a hold of me or get a hold of Denny Behrens, and he'd love to talk with you. Thank you.
You bet, Bruce, and you have a great day.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.